Helloing, my ladies and longs. It is me, Mr. Long. Now, as I'm currently busy working on my annual end of year video, which is gonna probably take quite a bit, I decided to hold you guys over. I'm gonna release two special videos, one of which is gonna be a compilation of every long form video that I've done this year, and the other compilation I'm gonna be uploading is one of my favorite series that I've done on my shorts, ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less, that at this point, thankfully, currently has a 100% fail rate. I hope these two big-ass compilations are able to hold you guys over until then. So, I'll see you guys at the end of the year video.
Ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. Copycat. Without a doubt a game that surprised me on a level even larger than Stray back in 2021. It has a heartfelt and suspenseful story, funny moments to break it all up, and some fun gameplay moments as well. So this game gets a definite A tier. Is this game trying to kill me? Yes, it is. A pretty unique puzzle game utilizing both a 3D environment as well as a little retro PC game. This is probably one of the best puzzle games I've ever played, and they got some pretty solid brain teasers in here that'll keep you guessing. This game gets an A tier. Underquest, a tiny automated RPG where you only need to worry about mixing different spells, weapons, or armor to go even further in each of these dungeons. This is one that actually really surprised me as well, and it's a pretty fun time waster. B tier. Rentler. Basically, this game is Balatru if you were a real estate agent, except with the caveat of not being able to unethically evict people. A tier. Steal the Pig. I could in fact not steal shit, and the game feels like a more buggy and less polished version of Human Fall Flat. D tier. Completely stretchy. A game where you essentially get to play as Mr. Fantastic if he was rendered in the same graphical fidelity as the Simpsons game back from 2007. I really like this game, although some of the game's mechanics do take some time to really get used to. B tier. Grandma No. This game has a shitting old grandmother that can vomit on the toddler she's supposed to be looking after, so for that, this game gets an S tier. Lone Ruin, a pretty damn fun action roguelike with a high difficulty and great art style. B tier. Cybercorp. This game keeps crashing. D tier. Agalos, probably one of the best Metroidvania games I've ever beaten. It has great visuals, amazing music, awesome gameplay, and the ending of the game caused me to do a tier, so S tier. Heroes of Mount Dragon, a pretty damn fun action beat-em-up that you and 3 other buddies can play. The only problem that I have with this game is that the gameplay feels a tad bit too slow and underwhelming when comparing it to its contemporaries, but still, I think this is something that you should give a look at. B tier. Deliver at all costs, a game all about delivery and causing millions in property damage. This game is pretty fun and has a lot more going on under the hood than the whole delivery side of it, but it is a tad bit buggy, and I do believe that the camera angle could cause a little bit of disorientation. Oh, and it's published by Konami, so B tier. 9/11 Cannibal, an escape room game like that one DLC mission in Resident Evil, except this game can be beaten in 10 minutes, though those 10 minutes are pretty fun, and this game can make for a good speedrun candidate. C tier. Now let's see if this ranking video was indeed under a minute. Fuck! Ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less, hopefully. Cyber Manhunt 2, a game where you get to play as ChatGPT trying to solve crimes in what is probably one of the most addicting games I think I've played in years. Seriously, I cannot recommend this game enough. The puzzles are awesome, the way you find these solutions feels so grounded and natural, and the game even hacked my PC in one mission, so of course it's getting an S tier because I'd be too scared to find out what happens if I ranked it lower. Coin Push RPG, the game's name says it all. You combine that one coin push thingy that people have lost their mortgages on and combine it with the traditional RPG, and surprisingly, the game works really damn well. I just hope it doesn't really lead to anybody getting a severe gambling addiction. B tier. Roulette Hero, a game where you take control of one of the most adorable little robots and need to progress through a bunch of stages by buying all sorts of different animals with their own unique abilities and getting coins all to defeat stronger and stronger enemies, and like our last entry, everything in this game is based on a roulette system, so every single pull of the lever can never be predicted. A tier. Black Desert. Well, it's debatable if this is an indie game or not. What I can say is without a doubt that this is an MMO game where I get to kick the shit out of goblins for like 3 minutes, and then what I actually ended up doing to these poor souls only gets registered minutes after the deed was done. Now, I'm aware that that might have probably been a me exclusive problem, but even so, what I just played was okay, so I'll just give this game a C tier. Bamba. A game where you get to take control of a pair of shoes, exploring this tiny open world, completing missions, and getting more kicks. This game feels like it's in a similar vein to something like Octodad, where the whole idea of the game is to make the entire concept of walking a chore. Oh, but you do get to step in dog shit, so this game is clearly going to be a contender for 2025's Game of the Year. B tier. Metzko, I think that's how you pronounce it. The best way I can describe this game is that it's an amalgamation of Hotline Miami mixed with Max Payne. Does that sound like a great deal to you? Then you're in luck because this game does kick ass. A tier. Cavern of Dreams, an N64 throwback featuring probably one of the most adorable little critters I've seen in any video game. And the game does well in both the visual department as well as its gameplay. So let's give this little fella an A tier. Now, time to figure out if that was under a minute. Ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully, Phantom Squad is ready or not too much for you to handle? Then play the console versions in that case. But if you've ever wondered what that gameplay style would look like adapted from a top-down perspective, with a lot of the bells and whistles still intact, then hell yeah, I can recommend Phantom Squad. This game gets an A tier. Crystal Gaiden Origins. Do you yearn for an old-school Contra-type experience, except without needing to do the pesky task of actually giving Konami money? Then let me tell you, Crystal Gaiden Origins is the game for you. It's got everything nailed from the visuals, the music, as well as the gameplay. And it's pretty damn solid too. So this also gets an A tier. Cyborg 3003. If the idea of waiting for RoboCop Rogue City to come to Game Pass in a little bit is a bit of a daunting task for you, then fret not, because Cyborg 3003 is here to fill in that void. And hey, if you ever wonder what a sci-fi interpretation of Killing Floor would look like, except this one, then there's no harm in giving this game a go. B tier. Astro Swarm. A game in the same vein as something like Call of Duty Zombies, mixed with a tower defense game. Here, you need to take on hordes upon hordes of various disgruntled astronauts, all while gathering XP to get new guns and buffs to augment your character. And hey, the game's got that good old-fashioned PS1 aesthetic that I'm so in love with. So this game also gets an A tier. Holdfast Nations at War. Did you want to experience the epic battles that took place in the 1600s with the bonus of being called the N-word? Then this game is a no-brainer. Now, aside from that one selling point, this game is a ton of fun, and I like the whole angle of it taking place during the more Napoleonic era of war, as well as mixing it with World War I, so there's some variety. So, with all that, this game gets an A tier. Arc Runner, a pretty damn fun third-person action roguelite that has a pretty interesting art style that focuses on neon, bright, varied colors on low-poly models and environments, and that just looks so fucking good. And in terms of the gameplay, it's your pretty standard roguelite third-person shooter, so if you do enjoy that gameplay style, then I do think that this is a game worth checking out. The only thing for me personally is that the game on Series S runs like shit, so for that, this game gets a B tier. Mechanoid. Do you like Mega Man? Play those instead! D tier. Crosswind, a survival game that makes use of swashbuckling pirates as the basis. And from what I've played, the game itself works really well. Though I don't know how I like my solo experience being tied down to an internet connection, and the game's mechanics as well do take a while to get used to. So from what I've played so far, this game gets a B tier. So, time to figure out whether or not this video was under 60 seconds. Ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. Misery, a game that describes itself as a cross between games like Lethal Company as well as Stalker, which on paper sounds like a great idea, but then the fucking playtest ended before I was able to experience 90% of what the game had to offer. So have fun looking at Rambo Stallone over here. B tier. No Rest for the Wicked, a Souls-like game where you get to take control of what I'd assume the fetus from PT would have grown up to look like and explore this new world after you crash your ship there. And everything that a Souls-like should have is all here and accounted for, barring the isometric camera angle. So this game gets an A tier. Ed and Edda Grand Prix. Now this game might be stretching it for an indie game because this is actually based off of a movie. And much like a lot of movie tie-in games, this game is just purely average, nothing bad, but nothing too great either. C tier. Inertial Drift. If you were a fan of the drift challenges in the older Need for Speed games, which you should have been, then Inertial Drift centers the entire game around that one gameplay style, with amazing visuals as well as some great variety in both the races as well as the drift challenges to boot. This game gets an A tier. Necrophysis. You remember Scorn from a couple of years back? Well then take that game and then make it better. Because yes, while this game sometimes makes you feel like you're about to OD on Fent, everything from the art, the design, the voice acting, all just hit incredibly well. And I really can't wait to see what else this game has to offer. A tier. Death Relives. Now this is a game that really hurts me on an emotional level. It's almost like that one time I woke up to no energy drinks and heart pain. This is a game that takes a lot of its inspiration from both modern and old school survival horror games, but now mixes that with an Aztec setting, which isn't something I've personally ever seen done in a video game before. But sadly, the game is very buggy in both its visuals as well as its gameplay. So while I can recommend it for the game inspiration and setting, I'll have to knock some points down sadly for its more buggy elements. C tier. The RPG, a parody game that takes a lot of the elements we love about the Elder Scrolls games, but then makes you play as the odd ones out. Now aside from that little silly billy fun fact, this game is really fun. It's got a bunch of quests, tongue-in-cheek humor, great gameplay, and nipple censoring, so this game gets an easy A tier. Survivalist Invisible Strain, a very surprising addition to this list because from what I've played, the game takes a lot of, and I mean a lot of inspiration from games like State of Decay, Project Zomboid, and The Sims, just to name a few. And for as janky as the game is in both its gameplay and its visuals, I really actually like this one, and I'm very interested to see where the game goes in both its world building, its gameplay, and its survival elements. So this game gets a B tier. Time to see if that was under a minute. Ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. Holy shoot. If you ever wanted to brace the gates of hell with a first-person shooter roguelike akin to 2023's RoboQuest, then I'm not gonna lie, this is definitely something worth checking out. Only problem is the game's performance from time to time because of that engine. So this game gets a B tier. SWAT Commander. Does the idea of spending close to $50 on Ready or Not seem not too appealing to you? Well then, I have some good news because SWAT Commander offers a very similar experience at only a fraction of the price. And after playing it, you don't really lose a lot here in terms of the overall gameplay experience that you could get from Ready or Not. Aside from maybe it being a little bit worse on the performance side, for obvious reasons, and there being a lot more polish issues. But still, this game is a pretty good substitute. B tier. Recharge. If you ever remembered playing the Micro Machines back in the day, then I'm very happy to report that Recharge will give you the same kinds of nostalgic tingles, only this time with a modern coat of paint. Now, Recharge is an extremely early access, meaning that there's not a whole lot to work with in terms of content here, but the groundwork already has me quite excited to see what the devs are able to add to this little project. So for now, this game gets a B tier. Action Cam Supernatural Case, a survival horror game where I'm convinced you're just walking around the school map from Phasmophobia with way more bullets than there realistically needs to be, and voice acting that I struggled to figure out if it's AI or just plain shit. Oh, and the game can be beaten in 20 minutes. D tier. Primal Planet, a 2D pixel art Metroidvania Souls-like where you get to take control of an Ooga Booga trying to reunite with his family alongside your most adorable little non-hostile carnivore. This game is pretty damn fun because of how well it combines the Metroidvania and Souls-like elements together along with the focus on survival gameplay. The only thing that this game really needs is controller support because as it stands right now, my tiny little Neanderthal brain can't wrap my head around playing this on a keyboard. But still, this game gets an A tier. Caden the Soul Eater. If you're a furry, and don't lie, I've seen some of the comments you guys leave on my videos, and you need a deep narrative with a bunch of branching pathways where every single one of your choices matter and will affect the outcome of the game, and fucking minds! Oh, and if you like Final Fantasy style RPGs, then give this game a go. B tier. Cyberclutch Import Night. If you yearn for the good old days where you got somewhat realistic style kart riders akin to something like Blur, then why not give the indie scenes version a go? B tier. Gold Adventure Gold. Now besides having a name that makes me sweat, this is a pretty unique RTS game where instead of controlling all of your infantry and civilians, you're just primarily a quest giver like some asshole DM in a D&D game. All jokes aside though, this game is really fun when you get the mechanics down, and there's even a petting minigame, so I can only give this game an A tier. So time to see if this was under a minute. Ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. Dungeons of Sandaria. If you need a dungeon crawler akin to old school Diablo, except with the added addition of being a scaly that'll sure to help Twitter artists pay the rent at the end of the month, and experience it in third person with a more Souls-like approach to its gameplay, then I'd say give this game a go. B tier. Eden Zero, an action RPG set in the far-off universe of Japan. This game mixes everything that you like about animes and RPGs all wrapped into one. Drawn-out monologues, overly long battle animations because epic, and pussy. I personally think that this is going to be another contender that's worthy to add to your Weeby collection. B tier. King's Blade. Out of all of the beat-em-ups that I've played for the series, this is probably without a doubt one of the best ones. I really love the art style, the combat feels heavy and fluent, happen, and overall it's just a pretty solid time either alone or with a bunch of friends. This game gets a B tier. Project Silverfish. If you love Stalker and wanted a little bit more furry bait, then Project Silverfish is exactly what you're looking for. Whilst I have zero idea what the hell I'm actually doing in this game, and I do think that's because this game is still in extremely early access, the groundwork that's been laid out here is a good starting point, and I'm extremely excited to see what the developers are able to do, to see what they can expand upon from what Stalker gave us back in 2007. B tier. Gradius Origins. Another one of Konami's classic collections. This time around it focuses on the ever so beloved Gradius franchise, a series of space side-scroller shooters that released in arcades back in the 80s. And much like Konami's other last couple of collections, this is a really solid time. It houses a bunch of entries into this franchise, letting you experience the entire history of the series along with the bells and whistles you'd come to expect from a repackage like this, such as quick saves and rewinds. And after going through all of these games, I have to say it's a shit ton of fun. This game gets an A tier. But now, Konami, there are two other games I'd also like to cover, please, so you know what to do. Sheep for the start. The best way I can describe this game is Goat Simulator mixed with a pachinko machine. This is a game where you need to get your rocket-strapped sheep to the end of the stage with your ever-dwindling fuel supply and shitty physics, and I really enjoyed this game. This game does advertise itself though as a rage game, so it's best to record yourself playing this at all times to get the funny clips. B tier. Counterclocking, a hack and slash game that takes a lot of cues from such franchises like Devil May Cry, only this time with like a quarter of the polish. Now when it comes to the most important part of the game, that being the gameplay, it is really solid, but everything else surrounding it really needs some time to cook in order to become something special and worth your time and money. So unfortunately, this game gets a C tier. Now, time to see if that was ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. Goblin Town, a really hard driving game. More like a really fun driving game, because in this racing platformer, you're tasked with taking control of this little bundle of syphilis and try your best to make it to each and every single stage by avoiding bombs, jumping over obstacles, and streaming your lungs out in order to slow down time to make controlling your vehicle a lot easier, and also to annoy your neighbors. So with that, this game gets an A tier. Bendy Lone Wolf, a spin-off into the Bendy series. In this game, you take control of Boris in a roguelike adventure-style game where you need to collect components in order to progress further down the Ink Factory, all while taking on these goo monsters and the ever so iconic Ink demon stalks you throughout the stages. I really like this game, except for the fact that your stamina needs to be refilled by giving Boris caffeine poisoning, which makes this game arbitrarily more difficult than it needs to be, but still, this game is quite fun, so it gets a B tier. Discounty, a cutesy pixel art store management simulator where you of course have to manage a store, and you'll be doing that by manning the register, purchasing stock for your store, and getting even more appliances to make Discounty the best supermarket in the town. And after your shift is over, you're still able to explore the town and interact with the locals, which is a nice change of pace and adds a lot of depth to an already good game. I really had a lot of fun with this, and I'm really curious to see what else this game has in store. Get it? A tier. Skelethrone: The Chronicles of Erakona. Now this game was a very easy thing to recommend from me because of this game containing two words connected with a dash. Souls-like. Yes, ladies and longs, if you're looking for a Souls-like akin to 2016 Salt and Sanctuary, except with the arguably more improved visual style, pixel art, then I have no problem recommending this game to anybody. The gameplay feels smooth, the mechanics are what you come to expect with Souls-likes, and it's just plain fun. A tier. Whisper Mountain Outbreak. Another easy recommendation for me because of the series this game takes its inspiration from, Resident Evil. In Whisper Mountain Outbreak, you and 3 other friends get to explore these everyday locations gone to shit, solving puzzles and taking on massive hordes of the undead in order to take on the next areas and the dangers that they house. While this is not the scariest game on the planet, everything from the gameplay, atmosphere, and design scream classic RE, and it nails it so fucking awesome, and you and some buddies can join in on the classic survival horror fun. And now for this game, this is going to be a first for the series, this game gets an S tier. Now, time to figure out if this is ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. Critter Cove. I feel the longer that I keep playing video games, the harder it gets to start beating the allegations. In this cozy little life sim akin to something like Stardew Valley, except Twitter is going to be eating good tonight, you get to explore this little island, completing tasks, talking to the locals, as well as embarking on some underwater seafaring fun. So the best way how I can describe Critter Cove is that it's a game that's a cross between Stardew Valley and Wind Waker, so this game gets a solid A tier. Crystal Gaiden Origins. After playing a little bit of the full game since the demo I covered last time, I still have zero complaints. If you're in the mood for something akin to old school Contra with the same style of music, visuals, and gameplay, then Crystal Gaiden Origins is definitely going to be the place to be. A tier. Vlad Circus: The Curse of Asmodeus. In this horror puzzle game, you take control of one of the Wrong Turn members trying to figure out what the hell happened to him that caused him to turn into one of the biggest mixed bags in Hollywood. All jokes aside, in this game you'll be exploring two time periods trying to piece together the bigger narrative. I really love the art style that this game has, the puzzles are really well thought of, and the plot itself is really well written, and it's got me hooked. So this game gets an A tier. Zoo Parasite. Now this game is quite interesting in the fact that it's basically an adaptation of Slender the Eight Pages, except this time you're exploring what I can assume is the New York subway. Your task in this game is quite simple: collect all of the power-up tanks from Mega Man and try not to get bored. Mission complete. But this game does slightly inch its way up because I really like the atmosphere and how the game looks. But all that kind of gets nullified when you realize that this game can be beaten in 17 minutes. C tier. Caligo. Now this is a game that's kind of hard for me to recommend entirely based on the fact that it's nothing more than a walking simulator. I think the story is quite interesting since you take control of a character who's pretty much lost all of his memories, but what happens to him is that he split his personality with the Shinigami from Death Note. So the plot has got an interesting enough premise, but if you're not really into walking simulators, I don't really know how much this game will do to change your mind. So unfortunately, this game gets a C tier. Chip and Claws versus the Brainioids. This game was a really nice surprise because of how it mixes real-time combat with real-time strategy mechanics. It's a really fun combination, and it mixes all of that up with some really fun, light-hearted, campy humor akin to early Ratchet and Clank, and I really fuck with this game. I've only really given it like 20 minutes of my time, but I really had a lot of fun in those 20 minutes, and this is something that I feel you guys need to check out, because who knows, it might be a gateway drug into letting you try out the two genres that this game mixes up. So for now, this game gets a B tier. So, time to see if that was ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. Shape of Dreams, a game published by NeoWiz. This game feels like it takes a shit ton of elements from games like Hades and League of Legends, meaning that it feels like if a roguelike was mixed with a MOBA. Take that how you will, but for me, this game gets a C tier. The Nameless City, a pretty interesting walking simulator with a damn pretty art style. In this game, you'll be exploring tombs, collecting glyphs to unlock more areas to explore, and piecing together the secrets of this nameless city. Maybe like finding out who forgot to name the fucking place. This game gets a B tier. Self-Delusion, a horror game about puppet vor and school. So those two elements should already probably give you a pretty good idea on how scary this game is. C tier. Moro's Protocol, a pretty damn good first-person roguelike in the same vein of this year's Dread Zone Rogue, if anybody's played that. But this game is definitely better because it's got the PlayStation 1 look going for it. So this game gets an A tier. Netherworld, a 2D pixel art style narrative game with an alcoholic black tentacle monster, a scaly's wet dream, and a character that exclaims that she's wet all the way to her pussy. So this game obviously has got to get a B tier. Gloomy Eyes, a game in the same vein as stuff like Little Nightmares, except way less fucked up. Gloomy Eyes is a game where you get to take control of two protagonists, needing to explore levels and complete puzzles in order to progress. And I really like this one. I love the art style, I love the story, I think the characters are pretty well fleshed out, and the world is interesting for the small amount of time that I've played. So yeah, this game definitely gets an A tier. Jump Space, yet another game that proves how well Starfield could have been done, but in this game, you get to soar across the entire galaxy alone or with somebody, so this game gets a definite A tier. Aegis Force, if you're a fan of games like Octopath Traveler but would have liked to know how that game would have been had it been more of a tactical RPG, then I have no problem recommending this game to fans of those types of games. B tier. Humans, a game where you take control of this little fuzzy creature until he gets spooky, and you need to scare off these fanboy and chum-chum looking fucks to progress through the stages. It's a pretty fun little stealth game that I'm sure you can just pop in and have yourself a good time with, so this game gets a B tier. Shooty Robot Invasion, an FPS game that manages to be fun, but with the 2D art style and it being a somewhat movement shooter, it kinda caused me to become a little bit nauseous, but my incapability of playing video games aside, this is a really fun game that used no generative AI. So, A tier. Bunko Fusion, probably not really an indie game, but it's a Lego game style third-person shooter where you're gonna be spending more time in the menus tinkering with the settings than actually playing the game. So this unfortunately gets a D tier. So let's see if this was ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. Kaku Ancient Seal. A game in a very similar vein to something like Kena Bridge of Spirits, the best Pixar game that Pixar and Disney doesn't thankfully own. This game combines elements of platformers and then mixes them with some crafting and Souls-like elements to make something that'll scratch that itch for masochists, I suppose. B tier. Flesh Made Fear. Probably what is without a doubt one of the best Resident Evil indie clones I've played in ages. If you're looking for something that harkens back to the good old-fashioned days of survival horror games, i.e. everything before Dead by Daylight, then Flesh Made Fear may be something that's up your alley. A tier. Lost Lullabies, The Orphanage Chronicles. A multiplayer game that tries to recapture the magic of Phasmophobia, but leaves you with the question of whether or not you're adopted. At least that's my headcanon. I couldn't really play all that much about this game because I don't have anybody to play it with, but the game both visually looks great and has a lot more personality, so let's give it a safe C tier for now. Nosferatu, The Wrath of Malachi. A game that launched in 2003 and still I yet managed to get a review code for it. In this game, you need to find and rescue your family members from Bill Skarsgård before he asks you to bounce on it. C tier. Iron Sand, a first-person roguelike game that's quite similar to stuff like Gunfire Reborn and maybe a little bit of RoboQuest. In this game, you'll be going from room to room, killing enemies and teaming up with these adorable little critters, but unfortunately that's pretty much it because the game can get kind of repetitive. C tier. Painkiller, a revitalization from this franchise that didn't get a new entry in over a decade, except instead of capitalizing on the newfound popularity of boomer shooters, this time this game decides to do a little bit of a silly and make the game a little bit more like Vermintide and Left 4 Dead. But surprisingly, it does it quite well. So much so that I actually ended up beating all the missions in this game. So this gets a B tier. Ion Fury, one of 2019's best retro FPS games. Now, this time it's available on consoles. In this game, besides the fact that you're playing as a woman, it's without a doubt one of the best throwback games to build engine first-person shooters like Duke Nukem 3D and Shadow Warrior. Only this time now you get to enjoy it as a smelly console peasant. So this game gets an A tier. Everwind. Essentially, you can see this game as a cross between games like Minecraft and Skyrim with a shit ton of Treasure Planet thrown into the mix. This is a really interesting game, and from the little bit I've played of the demo, I can see this being another worthy entry into the survival genre from both its visuals and its gameplay style. So, this game gets a B tier. Are we there yet? A game that basically sums up every camping experience ever. You get stuck in ditches, you lose your winch remote, and a bear fucks up your entire truck. A tier. So time to see if that was under ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. Godbreakers, an action roguelike mixed with some Souls-like elements. In this game, you're going to be going from stage to stage and taking on hordes of enemies until you reach the final boss of the area and get your ass handed to you. I really like this game because it's extremely polished, the gameplay is fast and fluent, and it really gives you early 2000s vibes, which is a definite plus for me. Only thing that I want them to add is a lock-on, but still, this game gets a solid A tier. Datura Time, a third-person shooter where you can trip balls and kill people while doing it. Definitely a court case where the defendant can plead insanity. This game is a nice throwback to early PS1 third-person shooter games with all of the jank you'd come to expect from that time. And that's really not a bad thing in this case because I really like the art style, the gameplay is quite nostalgic in that one regard, and it's definitely got a lot more soul than most AAA games on the market nowadays. So, this game gets a B tier. Dark Quest 4, a turn-based tactical RPG where you take control of a party of misfits as you explore various dungeons and taking on all sorts of different monsties. Now, I do understand that I may have just talked about every single typical D&D fan's wet dream, but what I really love about this game is that every single thing takes place on a game board, so it really does pay homage to the game most virgins play in their damn basements. Oh, and the game is pretty good. Makes me want to take a look at the rest of the games in the series. A tier. My Child of Ages, a pretty sweet little Zelda-like where you take control of this little character as you explore this island, completing different sorts of quests, trying not to kill the stupid goats that pissed off from your land, leading you into this fucking dungeon, and also use a various assortment of plants as either a means to complete puzzles or to substitute them for a Glock. So this game gets a B tier. House of Toys. This game nearly made me vomit because holy screen tear. D tier. Devour. A game in a similar vein to something like Phasmo, except now you'll be traversing these locations, needing to find an ass ton of different items to act as sacrifices, like goats or rats. And let me tell you, after playing this game and getting belched on by these bitches, I have a severe dislike for both of these animals now. But hey, the game was still a blast, especially if you have a few buddies. B tier. Where though? Where though? I'm taking the goat and pissing off. Ah, you fucking slap! Terror Gas Station Case. Kellogg's Blowjob AI D tier. Dead Engine, another vampire survivors like Nothing wrong with that. In fact, this game is pretty good, but there's just too many of these kinds of games. Still, B tier. Aussie Bogan Hero. The average Australian life adapted into a Metroidvania. B tier. Eclipse Breaker. Imagine if Parasite Eve and Hades had a baby and the end result was this. B tier. Superhero Simulator. The answer to most superhero type games like Superman, where the answer is instead of just doing the typical superhero stuff, just split that up with everyday life to experience the stuff outside of the action. B tier. Alright, time to figure out if ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Brazilian Drug Dealer 3, a pretty sweet throwback FPS on the Quake engine. This game is just an absolute shitpost and I absolutely love it. It makes me really wish that Brazil was an actual place. A tier. Endem Soldier, another boomer shooter. I don't really have too much to add. I think this game looks good, it controls great, but it unfortunately lacks the charm of Brazil, so I need to give this game a B tier. Moto Trials, a combination of games like Trials and Limbo, with it being a really fun puzzle platformer game where you're going to be completing puzzles both on foot and with a motorcycle. And I've got to say, I've had more fun with this game than I actually initially thought, and especially my one buddy who watched me play this. This game gets an A tier.
It'll be funny if that explodes.
Casting Whispers, a really interesting horror game that utilizes a blinking ability to help forward the game's plot as well to solve certain puzzles. My only real gripe with this game is the performance, which is really abysmal, so until they fix that, this game will get a C tier. Echoes of the End. Now, not really being an indie game but more of a AA title, this game is a God of War 2018 clone, with the same over-the-shoulder camera, a companion character that can be used for both combat and puzzles, and pretty much everything you'd come to expect if you played either God of War 2018 or Ragnarok. The only problem with this game is that it's way too linear, so that unfortunately brings the game down to a B tier for me. Dollhouse of the Dead, a game in a similar vein to stuff like Lethal Company, only this time I don't think you really need friends to play it with. In this game, you're going to be once again tasked by completing a quota at the end of the day, but now you get to beat the shit out of dolls, which I think deserves a definite B tier if you ask me. Get fucked, Chucky! Brew, a really cute third-person shooter roguelike where you're able to gather different kinds of potions to either buff your weapons or to buff yourself with different abilities in order to progress. It's a really unique take on a roguelike shooter, and I can't recommend this game enough. A tier. Neon Inferno, a really damn good 2D shoot 'em up where it tasks you of making it through all sorts of different enemies that try to attack you from either in your plane or in the background or foreground. This one feature alone makes this game be able to become so creative with both its level design and enemies, so it's worthy of nothing more than an A tier. Thunder Ray, a clone of Punch-Out, except it feels like they really wanted to ramp up the angst because this game is gory as shit, but it works all the best for it, and it's probably got one of the best animations I think I've seen in any video game. This thing gets a definite B tier. Right, now it's time to see if ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. Static Dread The Lighthouse, a combination of games like FNAF 3 and Papers, Please, mixed with the lovely Lovecraftian setting where you have to guide ships back to port, all while you have to deal with some spooky nasties. And I'm not talking about people like Cthulhu, I'm talking about Queso. This game gets an A tier. Acre Crisis, basically a modern day reimagining of Dino Crisis and Jurassic Park Trespasser, only this time with less titty health bars. B tier. Murder Inc. It's Hotline Miami, so I guess if you really like the formula of that franchise but you want to give another company a shot, then by all means, you can't go wrong with this one. B tier. Candyland's Adventure, a 2D platformer with a pretty interesting mechanic. Bubbles and hats. So you can kind of see this as a combination of both a hat in time and Bubble Bobble. It's pretty fun. The platforming isn't exactly the hardest thing on the planet, but the gameplay is fast and smooth, it looks great, and overall, it's a nice cozy game for people to enjoy. B tier. Prison Loop, spot the difference. C tier. Mortisoma, another game from the same company who made Acre Crisis, only now ditching the dinosaurs for Weird Al Yankovic in Amish Paradise. These games are quite similar in their gameplay and design, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because if you enjoyed Acre Crisis, then you'll most likely enjoy this game too. B tier. Dog Witch, a very sweet little deck builder roguelike where you get to play as this little adorable critter of your own making. In this game, it's kind of like Slay the Spire with a bit more of a puzzle aspect thrown into the mix. I really had a good time with this one. A tier. S.p.a.t. This game is pretty much trying to combine both Phasmophobia and Ready or Not into one single package, meaning that it's a tactical-ish shooter with some spooky demons. It's okay, not very polished, but I can't say it's necessarily anything bad, so this game gets a C tier. Brotherhood, an excellent throwback to Wolfenstein 3D with its retro aesthetics, great gameplay, only this time it sadly lacks the addition of a German painter, but this game gets a B tier. Deathground, a combination of games like Phasmophobia and a little bit of Outlast Trials, except now you're in Jurassic Park, and if that sounds like a great time for you, then hey, give Deathground a shot. B tier. Bo Path of the Teal Lotus. Basically, the best way how I can describe this game is if you put the gameplay of Hollow Knight in the setting of Nine Souls. Only that game was Taopunk, and this game contains a more traditional Japanese setting. This game, I would say, is simply excellent. With its fantastic visuals, addicting combat, and pretty interesting puzzles, I genuinely cannot recommend this game enough. A tier. Second Son. This game is pretty much Diablo, except this time you get to exercise your Second Amendment rights against those demon fucks. I was genuinely shocked with how much I enjoyed this one, and I am definitely going to be jumping back into it because I want to see how far they can go with this formula in this first-person shooter style. So this game gets an A tier. Time to... no, I'm not surprised. Ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. Terrifier the arcade game. A beat-em-up in the same style of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, only this time featuring everybody's favorite Fortnite character. While this game isn't anything too special when you compare it to its beat-em-up contemporaries, I really enjoyed my time with this game, and it's a great testament to see how far this movie has come. B tier. Winds of Arcana Ruination, a Metroidvania that brings back a lot of memories to something like Prince of Persia The Lost Crown from last year, only this time it's on a more indie scale. So if you like that game and you're looking to give your money to people who actually deserve it, i.e. indie devs and not Ubisoft, then Winds of Arcana is definitely something for people who are looking for a Metroidvania fix. B tier. Yumi Game, a top-down roguelike. That's basically all I can really say. Except in this game, you have the option of having these sweet little critters fight alongside you to give you extra buffs. If you're a fan of games like Hades or any roguelike with hack-and-slash elements, then give this game a go. B tier. Into the Fold Nala Junction, a game that claims to cater to fans of boomer shooters, but from what I played, this feels a little bit more like a hybrid between Doom-style design and Titanfall, only without the wall running. This game was pretty fun, but doesn't really stand out too much in the crowd of other boomer shooters, so this game gets a C tier. Crime Simulator, a game that's a hybrid between Thief Simulator and Lethal Company, where you set out into the streets needing to break into unsuspecting victims' households, taking as much of their valuables as you can fit into your inventory, and then hoarding them off to your hideout in order to meet a quota. Please also feel free to let me know in the comments below if Thief Simulator also did a quota thing, because I can't remember that. I think I played the game for like around 17 minutes, so I don't know if this game is just a carbon copy, but still, I really enjoyed playing this, so I'll give it a B tier. Alaric, basically if you crossed a boomer shooter with Castlevania. This game is pretty interesting with how the combat is laid out, with you needing to destroy things around the environment to get health and ammo, and each side of the mouse correlating to whichever hand fires whichever weapon. It's a really interesting premise, and I really want to see what happens when this game gets fully released next year, but for now, this game gets a B tier. Divinum, a 2D Metroidvania that feels like the perfect happy medium between Castlevania and Sekiro, because this game you're going to be needing to do a lot of exploring, killing off enemies by parrying or dodging their attacks, also that you can weaken them enough to launch their asses into the air, where you can continue a larger string of combos, which is definitely satisfying as all hell. It's now only sadly a demo, but I am definitely looking forward to when this game releases. A tier. Time to... no, I'm not surprised. Ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less. Hopefully. 13Z The Zodiac Trials. Probably one of the best indie roguelikes that I've played in ages, because it mixes the style of structure that you come to expect with roguelikes with the combat and fluidity from something like Devil May Cry. This game is a definite recommendation. A tier. Amber Alert, a horror game where you place into the boots of a police officer trying to save someone after an Amber Alert. It's kind of in the name. But whereas this game might seem nothing more than a cheap body cam horror game, it's everything but, because it's tense, it causes you to need to listen to your surroundings and take action before these chuckle fucks can get to you first. It's really interesting. I'm so surprised I got so hooked to this game as I did, so definitely check it out. A tier. Baseless, a shoot 'em up that I'm pretty sure is going to be a good time for some and a terrible time for others, depending on how motion sick you can get, because in this game you're tasked with taking out enemies, but how you move is that you gotta fire in the opposite direction of where you are and deal with anti-gravity mechanics straight out of Angry Birds Space. It's definitely a recommendation from me, but be wary that you don't vomit because of the controls. B tier, Shard Squad. Another Vampire Survivors like, but this time, you get to be a furry. Although this is pretty fun because it spices up the gameplay by allowing you to summon different members of your squad to help you battle. Almost like a Vampire Survivors Pokemon kind of hybrid. I really enjoyed this game, and if you enjoyed this genre, then I'm pretty sure you will too. A tier, Particle Hearts. A game that is extremely pretty, but one of those games that is more focused on an interpretive narrative, much like games like Journey, for example. But I have to say, it's got me intrigued, if not only just to see how this game will get brought to life in this style. So, this game gets a B tier. Forsworn, a very surprising turn-based tactics games that I really had more fun than I imagined with. You see, in this game, you and your crew of misfits are going to be going from stage to stage, taking on enemies, collecting loot, and leveling up. But why I think that this game works so well is because of how they sprinkle in this tactical combat with roguelike elements, making you always wonder what you'll be getting after each battle. This game surprised me so much, and I think all of you need to play it. This game gets an A tier. Body Cam, a game that I think needs no introduction, but I was surprised how much I ended up liking it. Now, disregarding the fact that the game is going to cause my PC to be the solution to a nuclear winter, I was surprised how well the gameplay worked in this game, and how little motion sick I got. And this game even has a zombies mode, and I 100% believe that this pisses out everything that modern zombies does. And so for that mode alone, this game gets an A tier. Time to... no, I'm not surprised. Ranking indie games in 60 seconds or less? Hopefully. Captain Wayne Vacation Desperation, a very fun and challenging boomer shooter where you get to play as this one-piece knockoff that has a robotic arm that substitutes your weapons you'll be getting in the game. This game is really well done for its style and gameplay, but fuck me, it's hard. So if you want to try out a new boomer shooter but want some Monkey Island sprinkled into the mix, then give this game a go. A tier. Glory Hunters, an absolute love letter to Game Boy RPGs like the Zelda games that were on there. This game, from its gameplay to its music to its aesthetic, which can be customized to fit your own nostalgic taste, is something that I genuinely think that everybody needs to experience. So this game gets an A tier. The Last Case of John Morley, a narrative adventure game where you play as a detective trying to solve a 20-year-old murder. This game was also a massive surprise for me for how engaging the story was, how good the game looks, and how good the voice acting is, and especially how smartly the puzzles were designed. If you're a fan of adventure and puzzle games, as well as murder mysteries, then give this game a go. A tier. Flee the Fallen, a 2D zombie survival game that is pretty much if Resident Evil met a Metroidvania. Whilst it's not as open as a Metroidvania, this game proves how well that formula can actually end up working, because the visuals look nice, the combat is satisfying, if feeling a little bit floaty and unresponsive at times, but I think with a little bit more polish here, this game could set a trend for 2D Resident Evil clones. B tier. Time to... no, I'm not surprised.